Well, it's good to see everybody here. Turn with me to John chapter 5. From John chapter 5, verse 17 to the end of the chapter is one single discourse. This is a teaching of Jesus. He's got 7 discourses in the book of John. And so anybody need a Bible? Lift your hand. We can get one in your hand. There's 7 discourses, and it's interesting because when you look at the book of John, John was mindful of the Hebrew culture, and they had a lot with the numbers, like number 7, number 3, a lot of things that were symbolic in the numbers. And in the book of John, you will find 7 I ams that really just prove that Jesus is God. There are 7 discourses in the book of John, and there's 7 signs in the book of John. Now, there's a number of miracles in the book of John, but there has been selected 7 of them, and those 7 are based on showing that Jesus is God. They're very, very strong evidence that only God could do these 7 signs. So Jesus is really under attack right now, and they're hating him like never before. And so we're going to pick up, I'll start with 16 and we'll move, and I'll read up until about 30, and we'll just try to unpack what we can do here. And for this reason, the Jews are persecuting Jesus because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. And what things were doing? Well, just healing people. I mean, that's what that Jesus is doing miracles, and it ticks the religious people off. And for this reason, the Jews were persecuting Jesus. So, verse 17, but he answered them, my Father is working until now, and I myself am working. For this cause, therefore, the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, and meaning all the more that they had already been wanting to kill him. And now they're really getting more and more volatile. They're getting like they're it's almost like putting a hit out on Jesus. Because he not only was breaking the Sabbath, but he also was calling God his own Father. Underline this in your mind, or if you but because why? He's making himself equal to God. And we do know that John wrote the book to show that Jesus is God, and that all these miracles that have been done were because only God could do those. So, verse 19, Jesus answered and was saying to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son of Man can do nothing of himself unless it is something that he sees the Father doing. And whatever the Father does, these things the Son does also in like manner. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all the things that he himself is doing. And greater works than these will show him, that you may marvel. For just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son also gives life to whom he wishes. Now, who else could do that? I mean, all the way laced through here is Jesus is God. I mean, you cannot deny it. It's obvious. This is what the text is saying. For not even the Father judges anyone, but he has given all judgment to the Son. So when we go before judgment, and a Bema Seat judgment, and I'll talk about that. Christians will all go before the Bema Seat judgment. But we're not destined for the great white throne. Amen? That's not where we're going. So Jesus will be doing all the judging in verse 23, in order that all may honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. So obviously, if you honor the Father as God, you honor the Son as God. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life, and does not come into the judgment, but is passed out of death into life. One of my favorite verses, and everybody ought to really memorize that if you can. It's a powerful verse. It's kind of like part of the foundation of John. Verse 25, truly, truly, I say to you, an hour is coming, and now is, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear it shall live. For just as the Father has life in himself, so even so he gave the Son life, give his Son also to have life in himself. And he gave him authority to execute judgment, because he is the Son of Man. And this is a term that Jesus referred to all in the book of John, the Son of Man, meaning he's the Son of God. This is the term he liked to use. And really in making him really relatable to us as men, if you will. Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming in which all who are in the tombs shall hear his voice, and shall come forth, those who did the good deeds to a resurrection of life, and those who committed evil deeds to the resurrection of judgment. I can do nothing on my own initiative. As I hear, I judge. And my judgment is just because I don't seek my own will, but him who has sent me. If I alone bear witness myself, my testimony is not true. There is another who bears witness of me, and I know that the testimony which he bears is true. And there he's really moving down to John, talking about John the Baptist. So the book, a lot of your scholars say the book of John is really two books. Chapters 1 through 11, it is the glory of God shown and with the seven signs. And then 12 through 21, it's the passion of God. So really the first 11 chapters cover 3 years of Jesus' life. And then at the very end, when he starts going to the upper room discourse and all that, and from chapter 12 to 21, that covers the last week of his life. In fact, chapter 13 to 21 covers one day, one evening, when he gave his discourses and he was betrayed that night. So man, we got some jam-packed stuff in John that is so good. And we're going to be able to unravel this. It's probably one of the greatest books to teach. I mean, they're all are. Every time I get to John or I get to Mark, that's the greatest book. I don't know. They're all good. But there are signs. So basically, and there are 21 chapters in the book of John, which is you can 3 times 7 is 21. The number 7 is really, really important in the Jewish economy, and the number 3. But the number 7 represents completion or perfection. And so as John's writing this book, he's keeping all this in mind. I don't believe it's by happen chance that this number 7, there are 7 I ams, there are 7 discourses, and there's 7 signs. And I think this is all to be shown to us that Christ's work was complete. So the I ams are basically in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He said, I am the light of the world, John 9:5. He says, I'm the resurrection and the life, John 11:25. He said, I'm the good shepherd in John 10:11. He said, I'm the bread of life in chapter 6, verse 35. He said, I'm the true vine, and that's in John 15:1. And he is the door, John 10:7. So we got all these. So we have these I ams really showing and pointing us that Jesus is God. And again, the 7 signs. So many of you have already been with us in this. We've covered the first 3 signs up until this point. He changed the water to wine, and the signs all have a purpose. Well, what does the word sign mean? I think it's interesting to know that what the word means. It means it's a token. It's something to show somebody where they're going or whatever. So, but anyway, I'll get into that. So what was the first sign we learned? And then I don't want to bore you with going over the same thing, but I want us to kind of get this. Of course, the first sign was the water to wine. And what did it reveal? It revealed Jesus as the source of life. And, it's really interesting. And he inspires his newly disciples by changing the water to wine. And by they put their faith in him. They saw that first miracle and said, whoa, that's pretty. And it speaks of the new birth. So this is what the water to the wine, and it reveals it's a sign. The second one, remember when he healed the nobleman's son, it was his mastery over distance and Jesus being omnipresent. Only God can be omnipresent. So if only God can be omnipresent, that means Jesus, if he's omnipresent, he's God. He can be everywhere. I mean, that just kind of freaks you out. Jesus is everywhere at one time. How does that happen? Just try to go to sleep on that at night. You won't. It'll be like drinking a pot of coffee. You just can't figure it out. Then we looked at the healing at the pool. We call him the pool guy. And he was master over time. He healed this guy 38 years in his position of being crippled. So he's not limited by time, but always is working. He's the Lord of the Sabbath. It was done on the Sabbath. He's the Lord of the Sabbath. Of course, then there was the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus being the bread of life. He alone can sustain you in your spiritual life. Only Christ can sustain you. Only He, being the bread of life, can cause us to walk after our walk in power. It's really His power over creation too. And this is exhibited in John 6 here with the feeding of the 5,000. He walked on water, which is His mastery over nature. John 6 also. He can walk on water. In fact, the healing of the blind man in John chapter 9 is unique to John's gospel. That's the only place where this is brought up. And more than 80% of John is not found in the other three gospels. 80% of it is pretty original. Well, I think that's pretty important, if you will. But Jesus as the light of the world. You know, He actually put a little mud in His eye. We used to have a saying, little mud in your eye and gravel in your gut, you know. He put mud in a guy's eye and healed the guy, and now he can see. He's the light of the world. And then, of course, last but not least, the resurrection of Lazarus. It shows His absolute power over death. Does anybody like that? Does anybody say amen on that? I mean, if you're going to say it, that'd be a good place to chime in. But if you go with me to 1 Corinthians 15, and we'll be reading from 15:54 through 57. And I just want to, I think it's a really appropriate text. But when this perishable will have put on imperishable, and this mortal will have put on immortality, then will come about the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? That is such a powerful verse. I've done so many funerals, and around that, when I read that, I'm going, yes, you have no power anymore, death. In fact, I don't even have to fear you, because I'm virtually indestructible till I'm done. So the sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. And this monumental verse here, if you had not memorized it, memorize it. And it says, therefore, my beloved brethren, and I love that he starts that out, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your toil in the Lord is not in vain. So work. God has called us to work, and it's not going to be in vain. What a powerful verse that is. So death has no sting in the believer anymore. I mean, we really, we grieve and we suffer the loss of people we've loved. But one thing for sure, death has this welcoming entrance into heaven. Does anybody want to go? I mean, I'm ready to go, Lord, whenever you. But I know right now He still He has got me on the planet. And this ball of dirt will be my home for a little while more, but then I'm going to have a big place in heaven, a big, big house. So what we see in those 7 signs is basically that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jesus Christ is truly God in the flesh. Some say the miracle of catching fish, and that miracle of Jesus catching the fish, they think that should be one of the 7 signs. And I think there's more pertinent signs that prove the point of He being God. I mean, His own resurrection is a sign; it's a miracle. And of course, the appearance of Jesus coming and walking through the door, and that's pretty amazing. But a sign is anything that communicates a meaning to a person reading the sign. Makes sense, right? Lafayette this way when you're on interstate. Lafayette's got 3 exits. I know what they are. A sign in the Greek is the word semaion, and it means a mark or a token or an indication. So that's what the signs are. They're indicating, they're marking Jesus' turf as God on the planet. And in fact, the book that was written in John 20, he says in John 20, verse 30 and 31, that the book was written so that you believe that Jesus is God. So, who is Jesus God? Of course He is. And so we have these 7 signs. Now, Jesus did say some things about signs, okay? I don't seek signs to authenticate my walk with the Lord, or I don't need signs I have the Word of God, but signs are cool when they happen. Like a miracle, it's great when it happens. But Jesus said this about signs in Matthew 13:38. He said, the leaders and the Pharisees were asking him, "Teacher, we want to see a miraculous sign from you. Come on, do something, And most people that say, "Hey, if I saw someone raised from the dead, man, I'd serve Jesus." Not so. You can see a lot of things, but you know what? Signs don't necessarily win us to Christ. They can influence us. But Jesus said this, that we want to see a sign from you. Then verse 39 of 13. He answered, and he says, "An evil and adulterous generation craves signs, yet no sign except the sign of Jonah." And basically, Jesus was in the earth 3 days. Jonah was in the belly of the big fish for 3 days. And he said, "That's the sign I want to give you. You guys won't even get it." So if you're seeking signs, and I think in really there's been a time in Christianity, it ebbs in and out, where miracles, you go to a church and they're talking about all the miracles and the signs that go on. And, gold dust falling from the ceiling. People had supernatural fillings in their teeth. I'm going, yeah, what about that? There are all kinds of crazy things that they see miracles and signs. Don't get me wrong, God can do what he wants. But I don't think he lays out signs just to entice the non-saved. I think basically there's a purpose for every sign. And that's what we talked about, the 7 signs. So the book is really broken up into 2 categories. Again, let me remind you that there's a book of glory, and the 7 signs are in that first part, which is John 1 through 11, and the book of passion. We really look deep into the Passion Week in John chapter 12 through 21. Now, I put a little thing up here. There's a little acrostic I saw in my studies. A guy had written a thing about the sign, and I thought this was pretty neat. It reminded me of Joe Whitchurch. Joe was here at the first service, so he got a kick out of this. But he's a master at this. Man, that dude he takes these all the time. But the sign, T, turning water into wine. H, healing the nobleman's son. E, elevating the lame man. S, supper for 5,000. I, interim on the sea. That's talking about Peter walking on the water. Interim on the sea. I thought that was pretty good. G, giving sight to the blind. And N, notification of Lazarus to come forth. So all these signs have purposes, guys, and it's not just Jesus says, "I'm going to just do some signs to freak the people out, and then they'll know I'm God." There's a purpose for everything he does. There's nothing he does that doesn't have meaning and purpose. And only God can orchestrate that kind of thing. I could never do that. So again, where we're at is we're seeing that, and Jesus is declaring himself God. Now, just one last thing about all that is that they're trying to kill Jesus. They want him dead. And there are 11 death threats in the 4. I looked at it in the 4 Gospels. Okay, there were more than that, but these are the ones that are recorded. They try to kill Jesus. Here's one, Mark 11, 15 through 18. You read it. The chief priests and the scribes, they said they wanted to destroy Jesus after he entered into Jerusalem in the triumphal entry. They want to destroy him. I don't know if it's destroy and kill. It's the same word. I'll get it here in a minute. John 18, 14, Caiaphas said, "Hey, it's expedient for one man to die on behalf of the people," talking about killing Jesus. And so, and then Matthew 12, 14, the Pharisees conspired to destroy him. They're not talking about just kill him, we're to destroy him. So I looked up the word, it means to assassinate him. Had a hit put on him. To NIV says to kill him. And the Greek word for that is apolium, to put out of the way entirely, to abolish, to put an end to ruin. So they didn't like Jesus. Jesus claimed to be God. Remember in Luke chapter 4, verse 16 and following, and they tried to throw him off a cliff, but he slipped right through them. How many guys can you slip right through a crowd trying to throw you off a cliff? Jesus is good. Of course, today's text, we have that, but actually over in Mark 11, when he cleansed the temple the second time, it ticked him off so bad. They're just like, yeah, it's crazy. Have you ever watched Home Alone? That little guy, I mean, he's really tore up because that little kid was getting the best of him. I can just see those Pharisees and leaders going, I'm going to hate that guy, you know, and they try to destroy him. In Mark 11. In Matthew 21, 33 through 46, Jesus said, the kingdom, guess what, is open to anybody, saying that even Gentiles can be saved. Anybody. It's not just for the Jews. That ticked them off so much that they wanted to kill him. 11 death threats that were recorded. How many more in 3 years? Guys, could you handle that? That would be tough. Jesus is tough. He's more than tough. He's God. You can't penetrate that thick skin of his because he loves you and he died and he will go all the way for you and I. And I'm so thankful for that. John chapter 15 verse 18 through 21 says, the world hates you. This is Jesus talking. But it hated me before it hated you. And guys, the world does not like you. Probably you're starting to discover that. The most persecuted group in the world now is white male Christians. Christians are the most hated group in the world now. And if you're white and you're conservative, it's even that you're hated. You're despised. That's not my stats. You can go look them up. That's just crazy. And where does that hate come from? I've never seen hate like I've seen. I'm sure maybe back in Noah's day they had it, but they were serious about Jesus. And I remember Paul, they put a hit on Paul. Remember they were Acts 23 verse 12 through 35. This is how mad people can get. There were 40 Jews that they bonded together and they said, if we don't kill Paul, we won't even eat or drink anything until we've killed Paul. And if you read the whole text, Paul gets out of that murder, that hit, basically, and I don't know what happened to guys. Did they die? I don't think so. But they were going to take, they were going to put a hit on them. So I want to just add this in there. You are virtually indestructible until God's through with you. I look at every life in the Bible and how it shakes out. And I just want to share with you, if you're sick this morning, or if you have some disease, or you have something going on, and you're thinking, am I going to last very long? And what's God going to do with me? I want to encourage you. You're not going anywhere until God's through with you. And then you don't want to stay around after he's through with you. It's just over. And I have been comforted through the years with that. That, Lord, whatever happens to me, I know I cannot be destroyed until you want me to come home. And I want to encourage you with that. God wants you to know how much he loves you, and you are virtually indestructible until that day he takes us home. So, verse was 17. Again, I'm going to kind of break it down as we go through. But he answered them, my Father is working until now, and I am working, and I myself am working. Now, many of you may have done the Experiencing God workbook. It's a great workbook if you've not been through it. But one of the biggest points in there is that you watch where God's working, and I've said this before, and join him in his work. Don't create any ministry or any work of your own. But you can see where God's working, and God promises that he will show us where he's working. And so I love that when he says, telling us that he is working until now, and I myself am working. For this cause the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because he only was breaking the Sabbath, but also calling himself and making himself equal with God. So again, underline that. Verse 19. Jesus therefore answered and was saying to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son of Man can do nothing of himself, unless it is something he sees the Father doing. And whatever the Father does, these things the Son does in like manner. He can't do anything unless the Father shows him. And we'll try to open that passage up a little bit to us so we can, how does that work? When do we get our cue? When's God working? And when do we join him? And how do we find out where he's working? And it's really not all that complex, guys. It really isn't. But again, the Jews are mad at Jesus. They want to take him down. And the Lord says, I got more work to do. They were persecuting him. Now, when he says truly, truly, I think that's an important thing. truly, truly would be like putting an exclamation mark at the end of a sentence, like, Terry, I really need you to come home, change the kids' diapers. No, I don't know. Whatever. But if you put an exclamation mark at the very end, and sometimes you put two, but truly, truly is like an exclamation mark, like, I want you to get this. You need to understand what I'm about to say, so perk up, because this is really, really important. He says it 25 times, truly, truly, I say to you. 25 times in the book of John. So he's really driving home a point, and I think one of the main points is that Jesus is God. And I'm so thankful for that. So like I said, it's like an explanation mark. And they said, these things I do in like manner. So determine what God is doing here on earth is to watch. Now, this is just a thought, but really to determine what he's doing here on earth, to watch the process of something, a circumstance unfold, and maybe look at the outcome, what's going to happen. And any circumstance, we can discern God's activity by watching and joining. Now, I'll explain that a little bit later. That sounds, it's not heady because I'm not a heady guy. But we have to see where God's working. Where is he working? And how is it that I'm to recognize it and join in? First of all, too, we have to know that Jesus said his total reliance is on the Father for everything. So before you can get in to do God's work, you got to realize one thing, that without him we can do nothing. And that sounds like, I know that, but have you really thought that through? You can do nothing without Jesus. Absolutely nothing. Without him, we can do nothing, and he can do nothing unless he sees the Father doing it. One of the best ways to describe what the Father is doing here is, I believe he's telling us to watch the world around you. Watch what's going on around you. Be sensitive to every circumstance you encounter. If you're at the cash register, or if you're at the restaurant and one of the waitresses come up and you see maybe God's opening a door for you, and maybe you're just casually walking down the street and you encounter somebody, and it's a godcidence. I don't believe in coincidence. It's a godcidence. And so the other day, it was interesting. I went to the VP, and everybody's like buying, Powerball and stuff like that. And I'm like, I just want a little can of Coke. And the VP down at our house is pretty rough. I mean, it's really rough, and there's there are a lot of things happen down there. So I come in, and I'm buying this can of pop or what, I don't know, I think it was pop, and the lady at the cashier was going, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I looked up. I said, "Well, I'm going to church. I'm a pastor." And she was on her phone, and I thought she was talking to me. I'm thinking, so I think, how do I do this? Well, God told me to join him. I'm working right now. I want you to join me. So I said, hey, do you go to church? Well, no, I don't go to church. So I got to share with her about Harvest Chapel and where we meet. I didn't go for the close because we got a few more times before I see her again. But it was really, really sweet. God said, I opened the door for you. And it was my stupid thing. I mean, I'm going to church tomorrow. And she goes, what's this guy talking about? You just look for any nook, man. You just go. So... And I remember God has led me so graciously in so many occasions. My wife says I got the call of an evangelist, and I think some of what of that is true. But I remember working at a place called CPC. Probably told you the story before. Here he goes, another CP story. If you've been with, or CPC, if you've been with me very long, you've heard some of these. But they're just like treasures to me. But I've been working in the summer. We work 50 to 60 hours in the summer, and we're building pre-stressed bridge beams. And I had a younger guy, probably I was like 25, and he was maybe like 22. And he'd been watching me work. And so it was. I remember his name. If he hears this, Brian, I'm talking about you, Brian Yoder. And it was July. Remember, it was just like a beautiful day. That day, it was toward the end of the workday. And he goes, hey, what does it mean to be born again? I thought, I'm going to join God here. So I told him about the gospel. I didn't, again, go for the close on him because I knew I was going to see him more. And I don't know where he's at right now. A lot of times I will go for the close and say, you want to receive him? and I don't have a problem with that. But God opened the door for me to share with him. Like I said, cashiers, maybe the lady that's waitressing, or a lot of times when you order your order and the lady that's waitressing or the guy, you can say, hey, we're going to pray for our meal. Is there any way is there anything you want us to pray about? And most of the time you'll get, yeah, my brother's in Afghanistan, or you'll get some response. What a way to see God. God's always working, and you don't even have to make it happen, although you might need some incentive at times. But so how do you know that you're getting your cue from the Father to join them? I thought you'd ask that, so I have a 3-point answer for you. This isn't all the sermon, but I looked at that you need to be cruising. That means you're patrolling for souls. They call it the patrol for a soul. And you're always watching where God is working. In fact, you being observant is part of that. But cruising, the watchman, Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 17. And you don't have to turn there, but I'll read it to you. I can't read it off that thing. I think the letters, my eyes are not what they used to be. 3:17 of Ezekiel. Now it came about at the end of 7 days that the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, I have appointed you a watchman to the house of Israel. And I could say that, I know we're not Israel, but to the church, I appointed you, Harvest Chapel, to be a watchman over Lafayette. I believe God's called us. This is our turf. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, warn them from me. Interesting. And when I say to the wicked, you shall surely die, and you do not warn him or speak out to warn the wicked from his wicked way, that he may live, the wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will be required at your hand. In other words, the blood that if you miss a chance, and I know, so I'm going to go into greater details of all this, but God's given us a responsibility to talk to people. And if you fail to do that, and if the person, doesn't come to Christ, God said it'd be on your hands. Now, that's not my word, that's God's word. And you think, oh, wait a minute. And God usually raises someone up. I remember my Uncle Yummy, he was he was one of my dad's brothers, and Uncle Yummy was, called him Yummy because he'd bring wine over to the house with my mom and get mad about it. And Uncle Yummy would bring wine. He'd let me drink some of it when I was little. And she would get real mad. You can't come over here anymore, Yummy. And Jess was his name. So he brought Yummy grape pop over for me. And I drank some grape pop with him. But the Lord told me Yummy was in the hospital. And he had just lost his leg because he had diabetes. And he was sick. And I was intending to go up there. And I didn't do it. And he died. And I really regretted that. I know that God would not leave a man without a witness, but I really felt bad about that. And I didn't go up there. I just kept, I'll go up and see Yummy when, and it didn't work. So, but if you've turned the wicked, verse 19, if you've warned the wicked and he does not turn from his wickedness or from his wicked way, he shall die in his iniquity, but you have delivered yourself. Again, when the righteous man turns away from his righteousness and commits iniquity, in other words, a Christian that is backsliding, and I place an obstacle before you, he shall die, which is interesting. Since you have not warned him, he shall die in his sin, and his righteous deeds which he has done shall not be remembered, but his blood will be required at your hand. Guys, we can't run on our past achievements. Well, I got baptized in 1977, and I led my brother to the Lord. That's good. I just want to skate in. No, you can't ride on past achievements. God's watching our walk as we walk now. However, verse 21, you have warned the righteous man, and the righteous should not sin, and he does not sin. He shall surely live because he took warning, and you have delivered yourself. Pretty heavy, isn't it? It's like, whoa. Now, God doesn't write that in there to condemn us, but it's interesting. So be cruising, and looking and be observant around. And the second one, I said, be cognizant. Be aware of your surroundings. Know and weigh out the possibilities of a connection with someone. Just weigh it out. I mean, be cognizant of where you're at. Jesus said the fields are white for harvest, but the workers are few. So I'm cognizant of that. I understand it. So if that's so, I need to be looking out into the harvest field, not waiting for somebody else to do it, but God has called me to do it. Guys, He's called you. You don't have to be Billy Graham or anybody that you think's a spiritual giant. You just got to tell people how you got saved. You can do that. If you got saved, you can tell them, right? And if you didn't, then you're in trouble. And so be cognizant, really. And it's kind of like when I like to use fishing for illustrations, but it's kind of like fishing. We used to fish a lot and catfishing in the tippy, and we would throw that stink bait out there at night, so there's two things you got to watch. If the pole has a light on it, they got that now, and the light lights up, you got to bite. But you're just back here enjoying the Tippy River. It's beautiful, but you're cognizant of that line being in the water, but you're still enjoying life. And I think that's just like us. We can enjoy. We don't have to be so burdened down by the loss, but we need to be aware. And so all of a sudden that pole starts going like this, and you wabash it, man, and you pull and you got him. I think just being cognizant of people. God could be moving at any time. You can put your hand, some of you guys know about, put your hand on the close to the reel, and you feel the bump on the line, and you go, oh, bump on the line. You don't when you first go out and to bump on the lines, you're jerking anything. You got patience, but but I believe it's all. And Jesus said, what causes this is a love relationship with Jesus. So be cognizant and then be connected. Remember, the connecting point with the woman at the well was what? Jesus said, give me a drink. So what he had done, he shared a need that this woman had. She understands being thirsty, and that were common. So there was a common need. Hey, would you give me a drink? And that was a connecting point to connect with her, to share himself with her. It's kind of the guy at the pool. What was the connecting point with him? Well, do you wish to get well? Well, that's a great line because he's by the pool. Yeah, he wants to get well. He connects with people. So you're just cruising, and all of a sudden you're like, you're cognizant, everything's going on, and maybe that cashier is talking to you. I don't know. Maybe they're not. But I'm just saying that we become aware of the things around us. And the pool guy took the cue. Yes, I want to get well, basically. But I have to just, I want to really just emphasize here, because of the love relationship Jesus has with the Father, the Father, shows or reveals to Jesus what he's doing. Because he has a love relationship with his Father. I love him so much. And I think really a lot of the degree that we're used in is based or predicated on our relationship with God and how much we love him. It's interesting. The key word to me is with the relationship is closeness. And I just want to pose a question to you. Can you have a relationship with Jesus without a real sold out love that he longs for? I mean, that real sold out love that you're just connecting with him. You and the Lord are talking. You are meeting him, and you guys are just, you guys got to know what that's like. If you're not doing that, then you need to. But that love relationship, and can you still love Jesus but not be walking close? And I think that I got to watch what I say here. Yes, a lot of people, they love Christ because they saved him, or he saved them, and he's done great things in their life. But where much is forgiven, much is loved. Man, when I got pulled out of drugs and alcohol, when my eyes were open that I don't have to drink anymore or party anymore, and I could marry this beautiful girl named Terry, I mean, it was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Because I was so thankful that God pulled me out of that. And I can remember just walking around just in love with Christ, in love with my wife. And Lord had been doing so much in my life, guys. That love relationship is imperative to be used by God. But a lot of people, they love Jesus, but there's not a lot of goings on, if you will. Have you ever read a book that the author is just like totally on fire, like, A.W. Tozer, or, some of those guys, Andrew Murray and some of those guys, and just wonder, how do they get close? I mean, there's a love relationship that they have with their Father. Well, many of you guys probably have heard of the book Tortured for Christ by Richard Wimbrand, and they really started the Voice of the Martyrs, that whole movement with Richard and his wife. But I remember reading the book, and he talked about an instance where, like, God will be so close to him. They tortured him terribly and beat him and threw him in dark, dank cells with no light. And he would write, Jesus would be there with me, and it was so sweet. That presence was unlike any other time I experienced God. And when he got out, he goes, I wish I could almost go back to prison and experience that. God just broke him. He was busted up. He had no place to go. He couldn't do nothing. Without him, we can do nothing. And Richard Wimbrand experienced the presence of God in such a way that he had never done before. And that is my heart's desire for you guys and for me, is to be able to, we can present this word and say we can have a love relationship with God in which we know we're in tune. Nope, that's God working there. That's not God. Don't do that. That love relationship. And yet, guys, it comes through, may I just say, prayer. Prayer, the disciplines, the Christian disciplines of life, prayer, word, fellowship. And a lot of times you can check off the boxes, but a lot of people don't pray. I mean, I've been guilty of going seasons with not praying like I should. And as of late, God's been laying on my heart, you want to have a love relationship with me? Then you need to read my word and talk to me. All he wants is, it's not an obligation, well, I got to talk to God, but it's a love relationship that I want to hear from him. He wants to hear from me. He's not just saying, if you don't come to me every day, I'll never use you. He loves you. And I think developing that relationship is imperative. And spending time in the Word and in prayer and doing it with you and just Jesus. So when's the last time you spent 10 minutes with Jesus? 15, just praying, maybe 20, come down 30, 40. There's times where you know that God he spoke to you and you were going to bust. I remember I would literally go to the closet. When I thought Jesus would be in the prayer closet, that's where I was. And it was hot in our house one time. I'm in the prayer closet and I'm going, oh, Lord. And it's like I just felt his presence. And I said, you can do any more, I'm going to bust. And I busted the door out because I didn't bust it, but it was so hot in there. But I experienced times where I was just feeling God's presence. And sometimes I didn't have to say anything. It was more just me being with him. I don't think we'll ever see a move of God until his people start finding that place in prayer with him. And I pray that would be a work of yours, or a goal of yours. Verse 20, for the Father loves the Son and shows him all things that he himself is doing. Notice what he says here. And greater works than these he shows him, that you may marvel. In other words, that Jesus is doing some really great works, but there's going to be more done. In fact, John 14, where it talks about, Jesus said, these works that I do, and even greater works will you do. And what does that mean? Can you do a greater work than raising Lazarus? I tell you what that I think that means is that we will do more because we have more concentrated time. Jesus had a 3-year spurt of winning souls. We've had 2,000 years to do it. You think that's greater? Of course it is. Billy Graham used to just amaze me. I would watch him when I was younger, and he would win these people to Christ, and thousands would come. I'm on the moment I want to ask you to come forward and to receive Jesus Christ. And I'm going, oh man. And then these people would come up. And why? Because he was faithful in God's word. So he said, greater works that we can do. How many wants to do greater works than Jesus? Not that we can outdo him. Well, okay. Anybody? You don't have to lift your hands, but a good time to do it. For just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even the Son gives life to whom he wishes. I'm God, so he's saying. For not even the Father judges anyone, but he gives all judgment to the Son. I'm God. He's given Jesus the go-ahead. In order that all may honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. I'm God, he's saying. I'm God. Can you see it so spelled out here? Truly, truly, I say to you, verily, verily, I'm of the utmost importance. You need to know this. I say to you, he who hears my word and believes him who sent me, I love this verse, has eternal life and does not come into judgment, but it passed out of death into life. Remember that. He who hears my word. You come here on Sunday morning, guys, this cannot be just a time for just sitting in the chair and hoping that you get some brownie points in with God. We're here because we love Jesus. And it's incumbent upon me. I have to be able to say, Lord, use me. Use me today. I'm not worthy at all, but his word is worthy. And anything comes out of his word is worth it all. Then he says, truly, truly again. I say to you, an hour is coming, and now is, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear shall live. So we kind of looked at that. There'll be a day that the dead, and there's two resurrections that are spoken of here. And he makes it clear for lack of time. But he says, do not marvel at this, an hour is coming, verse 28, in which all who are in the tomb shall hear his voice, and shall come forth. Those who did the good deeds to a resurrection of life, yay! And those who committed the evil deeds to a resurrection of judgment. So we have two resurrections. And so if you know anything about the judgment day, you know, when we die or we go by via the rapture, we'll all at one point sit at what we call the Bema seat. And the Bema seat is spoken of, I don't think I have my notes, but it's in Corinthians. Did I write those on the other one? But it's in the book of Corinthians in the 2nd chapter. And so we look at in Romans chapter 14, the Bema seat, yeah. So the Bema seat is where every believer goes before God, and God judges your works. Not just how many you did, I don't think that's but the motivation of your works. You could win the world to Jesus, but if your motivation was just to glorify yourself, then your works are going to get burned up and you're going to smell like smoke when you get up there. It's just all your works are burned up. But God wants us to know that we will be judged, and I really can't wait. I think that'd be kind of fun. I don't want to shirk back. And then, though, there's the great white throne judgment. And that resurrection of the dead, that all those who are in the seas and across the world who didn't make their choice for Jesus will stand in Revelation 21 before the Lord God, and he will judge you, not on how good a work you did, or you went to Harvest Chapel, you went to Bible study. All those are great things, but he's going to judge you whether you knew Jesus Christ in a personal way. You had a personal love relationship with him. That's personal and ongoing. That's what he'll, and so if you're before the white throne, guys, it's done. You can't plead your case. You're done. You're toast. So, but God wants you to know that this is not his will for men. He doesn't glory in the by the death of ungodly people. He's sad when that happens. We have to know that and you need to know that he loves you. And all I can say, sometimes reality check through the word is good, because are you okay today? Are you just playing games with Jesus? Or are you walking it out? I'm not saying that condescending at all, because I mean, I've got good days and bad days like everybody. But I want to be said of me that I love Jesus. I want people to, that's what John was known. That's the disciple the disciple that Jesus loved. He had a bragging rights there. I'm just and so the voice of God, the voice of Jesus will reach into eternity, and those people who know him will be brought in front of God to receive rewards. And you'll have crowns and you'll have rewards, and then after you get them all, guess what you get to do? You get to throw them at the feet of Jesus. I watched, I don't know if you ever watched the Brian Pettigo story, and Gail Sayers and Brian they actually were on the Bears team, and Brian Pettigo was always a step behind, not a step, but he couldn't keep up with the greatness of Gail Sayers, although he was a great running back. And so they would be a team, and Gail Sayers and Brian Pettigo the Bears were just like busting out and doing all kinds of great things. And then Brian Pettigo, he gets cancer. Is it Pettigo? Piccolo. I said Pettigo because I know Brian Piccolo. You guys know the story. So anyway, you got the and then all of a sudden he gets sick, and then Gail Sayers wins this award. And I remember at the awards banquet, he said, I don't want this. I give this to Pick, my buddy. And I thought, that's indicative of what we say. Lord, if I get any good crowns, if I do anything good at all, it goes to you. Because without you, and this is the text, I can do nothing. And how much is nothing in the Greek? Nothing. Nothing at all. It's not a deep word. It's like, I can do nothing without Jesus. I can't get up here on Sunday. You can't go to work. We're just like, hey. And God's wanting to let us know that he loves us. Broken down old beaters. Fixer-uppers are his favorite thing. He fixes up. But I think, and let me just blend into 30 here we'll next week, because I don't have time to cover the 5 witnesses. And next week's going to be really good. But we'll talk about the 5 witnesses that verify Jesus being God. But let me read verse 30. I can do nothing on my own initiative. I mean, he can't even initiate. You ever been that way? Like, I can't even initiate right now. I get so tired sometimes I can't initiate, get out of the chair. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just because I do not seek my own will. Completely different from our narcissistic society that is so self-centered and it's all about them. But the will of him who sent me. So I can't do my own will, but only his will. If I alone bear witness of myself, my testimony is not true. He's saying, even if I just say this myself, it can't be true. You got to have some verification, although it is true. There's another one who bears witness of me, and I know that the testimony which he bears of me is true. And then we see John's testimony, the works, the testimony. We see the testimony of the Father, and we see the testimony of the Scriptures, and we see the testimony of Moses. And that's what we'll be going through next week. But I want to just end with this verse here. We'll hit it again next week. Verse 40, and you are unwilling to come to me that you may have life. So in fact, I have to start with 39. You search the Scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life. And it is these that bear witness of me. And you are unwilling to come to me that you may have life. You are unwilling. And first thing, too, is the Scriptures bear witness of Jesus. And it goes to show you can master the ink in the book, but you can't master a relationship with Christ. You have, and so he says, if you are now even willing, the free will that we have, it's a beautiful thing from the standpoint of when we choose to follow God. But you have free will. And why would he say, and you are unwilling? You are unwilling. And let me just share this. Are you willing this morning to give everything to Jesus? And like I say, maybe you already have. Maybe there's some little nooks and crannies that, he's saying, I need to be Lord there. And I've been speaking to you a while about it. And you can't do anything unless you're 100% on. And I heard it said, and this is really indicting. It's not the Scriptures, but if he's not Lord of all, he's not Lord at all. I think that's what the Bible teaches a lot. So, is he the Lord of all your life this morning? Are you able to say, Lord Jesus, you control everything? And if you can't, then you're in a good spot, because we'll have some people, some of the guys will come up and pray. Trent will play some music. And if you feel like you just like to just say, I'm done with it. I'm done with whatever I'm dealing with. Would you please, Lord? I'm not, not expecting masses to come up here, but I do sense that if you're like me, you have seasons where you just are not giving it all, and you got to repent and come and say, Lord, I'm done. I'm done with doing my will. I'm done. Would you please infuse me with your power to do your will and to win people to Jesus?